I'm Town Manager Eric Peterson, and this is a summary from the Hillsborough Board of Commissioners meeting from May 11th, 2015. A graduation for our first Hillsborough University Citizens Academy. And for folks who aren't familiar, we had a 6-week-long Citizens Academy in February, part of February, March, and April. It was seven courses. 6 were on Wednesday night. 1 was a utility tour on Saturday, where we went out and spent a good part of the day Saturday visiting the reservoir, water plant, wastewater plant, sewage pump stations, water pump stations, letting everybody ask a lot of questions. The concept from the Citizens Academy was just to, in the board's words, to create a pipeline to get more citizens interested in participating in government, whether that's on one of our many advisory boards, or ultimately interest in the town board, or learning to contribute in other ways, or whether it's a big development that folks want to figure out how to weigh in on it and impact decisions. So citizens were able to interact with all town departments, advisory boards, and it was a great experience. All of the citizens asked a lot of really good questions, and it was fun for the staff, and we learned from everybody. So they put a lot of time in. So I want to list our 18 graduates. We had about 28 people overall, so I'm going to run through their names. We had Ashley DeSena, Bob Johnson, Brian Perkins, Brian Rowe, Frank Cohen, James McElvey, Jim Parsley, Joanna Snipes, Joanne Leary, John O'Leary, John, Ken Krebs, Leanne McLemont, Louise Long, Michael Snipes, Rob English, Sarah DeJaneiro, Sarah McCrae, Tyler Higgins, and William Fleming. The big one was the Colonial Inn. The Development Finance Initiative from the UNC School of Government was there and provided a presentation. If folks want a lot of detail, they can go to the website and look at the agenda, ci.hillsborough.nc.us, go to town board agenda, and there's the PowerPoint presentation that Christy Raiuli, who made the presentation from DFI, and so I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights. So the analysis that DFI did was trying to accomplish a few things. One was sort of a market feasibility analysis, what kind of potential uses could go in there, what's the actual value of the current property, and build a financial model. They've got a very large, complicated model that they use that they can't show because it's proprietary, that they use throughout the state of North Carolina to go in and help local governments like Hillsborough that maybe don't have the financial expertise to do a pro forma and figure out how to make a valuable project that may not otherwise be financially viable work. And they'll identify options like, oh, you could create a public-private partnership, and this is who may be interested in investing or be more of a philanthropic interest and make things work. So so that was also part of it, and then ultimately talking about some options for the town and tools we could use. Ultimately, I think the bottom line was it's going to take about just under $3 million. It was like 2.8 million something, including land acquisition, to get the inn back in operating condition. So one of the things they identified, which was a major assumption of the financial model or a component, was like, what's the acquisition cost for the inn? Because we know it's been for sale for a long time, and there's apparently 3 different models that you can use to determine the value, and on 2 of the models the value of the inn was 0, because if it's going to take close to $3 million in renovation costs and be financially viable, so it was 0 under 2 of the models. Under the best case scenario, it was worth $142,000. So that's what they used as one of the assumptions for that. So they also looked at what would it take for this to be financially viable, and in order for the acronym is IRR, internal rate of return. And so investors put money in, you need to get back apparently like 15 to 20% at least to make it financially viable after all the investment and the potential uses that you may use. And under that, the scenario, including use of historic tax credits, was only 3%. So the DFI report said basically most of the uses you would consider in the business world for this, they are just not financially viable. So what can we do to make that financially viable? And they went ahead and explained, well, you need to either have philanthropic contributions, the town could do things such as provide a grant, assuming that the taxpayers of Hillsborough wanted their tax dollars to go towards the Colonial Inn. That's a whole other debate. Or give them landmark status if that was allowable in this situation, to reduce property taxes. And then the model, which people can go look at online, gives more detail about what it would take to make this work. So the board, they got the board up to speed on that, and did identify that there are things such as eminent domain, that the town could go take the Colonial Inn. We'd have to figure out, probably through court proceedings, what it would cost to do that. But the downside is it really limits what can happen with it afterwards, because on how the town would dispose of it. In the impression I think we get is that most people feel the ultimate solution will be the owners of the inn cooperating with the private sector to come up with something. And one of the takeaways from my perspective from this analysis is the town really can't be the driver on this. The town can assist in some ways, but this is information for the folks in the private or philanthropic world that are trying to partner to get this, that can come to the town and say, hey, we want to make this happen, but to help facilitate a town, could you do, change the zoning, or could you do the landmark status, or things like that. So the board will digest this, and hopefully there will continue to be interest in the end, and the board now has a better idea of what it can and can't do in assisting with the end. Waterstone development master plan, the developers from Stratford Development came in, talked about they've wanting to make some potential amendments or changes to the uses out there. They brought along their real estate agent, who talked about, well, this is what the market's looking like. The market wants more residential, and they want a smaller office space, and they had a discussion with the board, and the board basically expressed their concern about exchanging too much commercial development for more residential. The developers did say that the overall density they're thinking would go down as far as maybe fewer units residential, but the developers from Stratford said, we're going to go back to the drawing board, look at all the information, what we've heard from Town Board, what the market's telling us, and we're going to come back with some suggested changes. So let's stay tuned for that. I think that we'll probably see that maybe in the fall, the next joint public hearing with the planning board. And last item about the proposed Collins Ridge 137-acre development behind Daniel Boone. The developer was also there and had a discussion with the board, and it looks like they will not be on the July public hearing, because there's some more research and work they want to do and getting ready to figure out what they want. One of the takeaways from that was the developer was saying, we're still developing what it is we want, and they commented that the neighborhood meeting a few weeks ago, which we had a big turnout for, was helpful. One example they gave was, we had not thought about installing solar and having solar be viable as far as this development. And we like that. We've looked into it. They talked about getting more information on that and other things. So they have indicated they're looking at doing another neighborhood meeting to try to get feedback and guidance and concerns from the public again in July, working towards that October public hearing. So I think that was the sort of big takeaway from the Collins Ridge development. So staff will continue working on the annexation feasibility analysis. They are talking about, I think, 5 different products. There was senior apartments, I think senior townhomes, market rate townhomes, market rate apartments, and some single family residents. Right now they're only looking at 70 single family units. The other ones are more dense. But we'll work on that and updating the water capacity analysis in preparation for the October meeting.